fortune, basically. I mean, he was, I guess...
Do you remember his name?
Zephaniah Swift Spaulding.
Oh,
you see, I just remembered it, but I'll forget it again. Zephaniah Swift Spaulding, he was called. And he, I'm trying to think how they met. I know he married grandmother, but where did he marry grandmother? Or did he take her out to Hawaii? I'm trying to think. He was definitely an Easterner. And I don't know how they met. But it may be that he took her out to Hawaii because he may have been, a younger brother or something, and it was a possibility to make a fortune there. And then they had a sugar plantation. I mean, you could buy land for very little, and sugar was a good thing, and it was a good, profitable business. They were quite rich, actually.
Lydia grew up on Hawaii.
She didn't really, because grandmother didn't stay on Hawaii. Okay. Grandmother was not. She also divorced Zephaniah Swift at some point, so she liked to live in Europe and travel around and so on. And she took Mommy with her, and also her sons. So they grew up sort of all over the place. And I knew all of them. Jimmy was the eldest, Mommy was the second one, and Jack was the third, and Vittoria was the youngest. And
all Bodreros.
All Bodreros. Those are 4 Bodrero kids. And I'm trying to think where grandmother brought them up. But she moved around a lot. I mean, Mommy was born in Rome, I know that. And Uncle Jimmy, I think, was born in Brussels. So she must have married, I'm trying to think what generation I'm thinking of. They lived around in Europe for a while, in different places, maybe with jobs, maybe with God knows what. I know Brussels was one of them, and Rome was Mommy, and was another one born in, I don't know, in France, and I'm trying to think if any of them were born in America. I don't know Vittoria, but Jack might have been born in America. Vittoria, I really don't know. He was the uncle I knew the least. But they did all end up back in America. And none of them spoke Italian or French particularly or anything like that, so they can't have been brought up much in Europe. I think they were definitely brought up in America. But grandmother then lived in Tuxedo Park. She became a member of that Tuxedo Park thing. And I think they grew up a lot there. Mommy came out there, I know that. And so somehow they all ended up in America. Mm-hmm. And maybe she went to California, grandmother, at some point. And Jimmy was definitely Californian, and so was Jack.
Well, where did your mother meet?
Ranieri? Valentine. Valentine in the East when she came out. I think when she came out as a girl, she came out in New York and met...
And her father, Bodrero, at this time is with your grandmother, wherever they were.
Well, no, she had left her...
she left him, so he's back in Italy somewhere.
He stayed in Italy. He had a career in Italy in the army and so on. And Grandma left him early on. I think grandfather loved women, and I think he wasn't terribly faithful. And I think he didn't feel that it mattered. He loved Kitty. That was his wife, and that was special, and and he had 4 children with her. But somewhere along the line, he didn't hesitate to have a girlfriend from time to time. I think he was reasonably discreet about it, but not discreet enough that Grandma didn't know. And she got very fed up with that. And but she stayed through 4 children, and then left him. And when she left him, I think she came back to America, wherever she had been living before that. I think she lived in Europe with him. His life was a semi-diplomatic life. So, I mean, he was in Brussels at a certain point for business, for probably the Italian government or something. And I think one of the children may have been born in Paris, and Mommy was born in Rome, I know that. And by the time all 4, and I think grandfather came all the way to Hawaii. She went back to Hawaii. That's where her father was living. That's where she grew up. So she went back to Hawaii, and grandfather did come all the way to Hawaii once trying to get her back. And they were reconciled briefly in Kauai, but even there, I think he had a girl, he picked up a Hawaiian on the side. I mean, she just tolerated it on the side, these women. They were always on the side. They were never that he would, but she didn't want to tolerate that. So that was the end of their marriage. And then she stayed in Hawaii and on the East Coast, probably thinking schools are better on the East Coast for the boys.
Right.
I mean, they went to Pomfret and things like that.
Right.
I think Uncle Jimmy went to Pomfret, and Uncle Jack, I don't know. So I mean, she had them in Eastern schools, boarding schools for the boys. And Mummy came out in tuxedo, and Grandma had made her life basically in the East, I guess.
Right.
Thinking of her children. And,
then your mother meets Val.
And my mother met, Val probably maybe at a coming out party or something like that.
And they get married and have you.
And they got married. And Mummy was probably not happy with Grandma's life. It was not very still or stable or anything. So she probably didn't have a lot of friends.
Right.
And fell in love with Daddy, and it seemed a very stable situation. It was a perfectly suitable husband, and married him. And they were very unsuited to each other. They hadn't had a chance to get to know each other at all. And I don't know how long she stayed married to Daddy. I don't remember them together. So it can't have been very.
2 is probably a pretty good one.
Yeah, 2 or 3. They were definitely divorced. And Mummy then went, as I said, I think first back to Hawaii, and maybe then that part of the family were living on the West Coast, which was easy for Hawaii. And so she began living on the West Coast. Then she bought a house in Santa Barbara, and that became her home for a long time. All my growing up years, really, until the war. Until she married Ranieri. So it seemed like a long time, but it was definitely quite a long time. It was probably 8 or 10 years.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. And then when she married Ranieri, she took me to Europe at that point because I wanted to go. Mm-hmm. I mean, she gave me the choice, but I definitely she was a very good mother, and I loved her. And I didn't have a very close relationship with Daddy.
Right.
And we, particularly after he married Happy. I mean, we no longer did anything I particularly liked. I mean, life in the summertime in Chilmark was pretty dull. And if he'd stayed married to Emily, if Emily lived, I might very easily have stayed with Daddy and Emily. And Mummy would have had no objection to it. She liked Emily.
Right.
And she thought she'd bring me up. I mean, she would have been perfectly happy with that. But she didn't like Happy, and she certainly didn't want me brought up by Happy. So, I mean, I think she knew perfectly well what she was doing when she suggested to me to decide for Europe. And then we went through New York, as I think I told you already, very secretly. I mean, I wasn't taken into town at all, because that would have been dangerous. And
because your father would have found out?
If my father found out, we knew he wouldn't let me go. And the war was not there, but it was definitely, Hitler had come up, and there was, I don't think they knew it was happening, but they expected it could happen. And so Daddy would certainly have not let me leave. I mean, I'm sure of that.
Well, how did your mother get you out of town? This is fascinating.
Well, I came east with them, and we told my school in the east, some balderdash, that I was not coming to school for a week or something like that, but didn't say I was leaving or anything. And then they took me east and we did it on the train in those days. It was 3 days of train.
They being Lydia and
Ranieri, yes. And I was taken off the train in Philadelphia by a friend whom I don't know who she was. It may have been Fifi Betts' mother, Connie Betts, who lived here. And I stayed with people I didn't know who they were. I didn't care. I never remembered. I mean, I forgot them completely. But I stayed for 2 days, at least 2 nights with them, 2 or 3 nights, and was brought to the boat when Mummy and Ranieri were leaving, they stayed in New York City. There's no reason they couldn't be in New York City. I mean, even Daddy even knew it didn't make a difference as long as they didn't have, but if I'd been with them,